And why do you like Publix so much? Is it because they rolled back their DEI and opposed legalizing marijuana? Or is
No.
it because they're green like money, which you love?
I just like the Publix Chocolate Trinity ice cream.
Okay.
There's nothing like it. But I've literally only like bought it once in the 11 years we've been together.
That's pretty crazy.
I'd never
That's your
almost
favorite?
never
You
buy
like
it.
that more than like the Talenti?
Yeah,
Or like,
it's
you
my
like that more than
favorite.
when we go to like out to an ice cream place?
Oh, I do like when we go to Mayday.
Yeah.
And I get to get the Raja honey. But no, that's my favorite ice cream.
Reacher would hate that.
Oh, well, Reacher has his own opinions on ice cream that
Yeah.
I don't
It's
necessarily
chocolate or
agree.
vanilla.
Well,
If it's not chocolate or vanilla, it's bullshit.
okay.
That's what Reacher says.
You're right. He probably would throw mine in the garbage.
He would throw yours in the garbage for sure.
He probably wouldn't throw the chocolate Trinity in the ice.
I think he'd think
in
that
the
was
garbage.
probably okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah, it's the best. It's
He likes
my
Clark
favorite.
bars. That's a That's a big Reacher trait. It shows up in
Oh my
multiple
gosh,
seasons.
that's so crazy. That's like something
That's
that would,
good, right?
That's something that would only be. Was Reacher like a comic book character?
No, Reacher is a long-standing novel series. It's
Okay.
like Jack Ryan or,
Okay.
A Tom Clancy
Because I'm like,
style.
that's such a thing that would be like in a comic book that started coming out in like 1967. It's
Yes.
like, and he likes Clark bars.
It's
And
one
she
of
likes cereal.
The best things about that show is it's clearly written by like a guy not from this era, but
Yeah.
the show is modern, but they kept like all of his traits. So like the music and food that he likes is insane.
He
for...
likes I almost said milk steak, but he likes like Kentucky Fried Steak, which is like something that like no one eats today.
Yeah, but it's
but
just...
like was like my dad's favorite.
Sure, yeah, he hangs out in old diners and
Yeah.
listens to records,
Yeah.
even though he's like an operator who owns nothing. Yeah.
He's crazy.
That's good watching right there.
Hey Maxwell.
Yeah,
Do you accept hybrid or cross genre work?
we do. We don't have a section for it.
What would that look like?
Yes, I guess I'll define those. My writing is what that would look like.
Okay.
You know how I do kind of the poetic prose, like it's maybe a little bit difficult to define. It's a little bit experimental. Maybe a fictional poem, but written in a prose style, or even something like, I would probably not like this very much, but if like you made a fictional piece that like it spelled out the title of it or something with the way it's formatted, but
Sure.
it's not a poem.
Yeah.
That might be pretty corny,
Taylor
but that
Swift lyric sleeve style.
very cool. Very cool.
Do you know what I mean?
I don't.
She would bold and she would capitalize certain letters in the lyric sleeves.
Oh, Lemony Snicket.
And you would write them out and it'd have a secret message about the song.
So that's not really what I mean, but I guess that
okay.
might be like something somebody might do. But basically, it's not necessarily poetry. It's not necessarily prose or fiction.
Okay.
But here's the thing, is we don't have a section for it. So yes, I would definitely publish it. And I would probably, if the piece struck me hard enough, but it was clearly hybrid or cross-genre, if it's clearly fiction, we just publish it as fiction because we do experimental fiction. If it is nonfiction, then I would publish it as poetry. And that's just what I would do. Because we don't have creative nonfiction as a category.
Interesting.
So I would just publish it like a prose poem under our poetry banner. And that would communicate to people that, like, this is a nonfiction piece.
That's really interesting.
Yeah. Of me?
No, well, I was just like, I didn't really consider creative nonfiction.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you've probably been a little bit less exposed to it, but it's kind of probably the fourth big,
Is
or
that
the third big guy.
If I wrote a poem about, like, Abe Lincoln?
No, creative nonfiction is prose. Like, a biography could be considered creative nonfiction.
Oh. Okay. Oh, I've read some.
Yeah, tons. Most nonfiction, all nonfiction books that are like almost novel style, like The Monk of Mocha. That's creative nonfiction right there, right?
It's bordering on creative fiction.
That's true, but like stuff like that. That's ostensibly nonfiction.
Yes.
Devil in the White City. That's creative nonfiction. There's more literary creative nonfiction, but like
Okay,
like,
cool. Interesting.
In Devil in the White City, like, they describe the ocean blue of his eyes. Like,
well, I read a creative nonfiction book, and that's what I really struggled with. It was like sometimes it would be like so-and-so said this, and it would be like,
Yeah.
he's, like, chuckled. And I'm like, is that a fact?
Yeah,
You know, like,
I
I don't
know.
know.
That's kind of actually, it sounds very simple and it probably might get some eye rolls, but that is also what kind of bothers me about it a little bit is I really search for authenticity in anything, and there is a certain lack of it when you're making up something but labeling it nonfiction. And I
Yeah.
get that there's a suspension of disbelief, but it does bother me a little bit in that genre, and that's why we don't publish it. And I don't really anticipate us publishing it just because I don't think I've ever read a creative nonfiction piece that really excites me.
Yeah.
I've definitely read like more straightforward nonfiction that's like more of a report of something that is very, very interesting and is
Like,
well researched.
Under the Banner of Heaven.
Under the Banner of Heaven or Killers of the Flower Moon. Yes,
Both of
definitely.
those were really interesting, but didn't feel creative. They just felt like nonfiction because
Yes.
it wasn't doing any of that, like, describing conversations as if it was happening right then.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, we won't do creative nonfiction, but if we receive something kind of experimental or cross genre that is a little bit creative nonfiction, it'll probably get published as poetry if I think it works as poetry. Cool. So, yes, yeah. Good question though. That was a good question. And I love hybrid stuff. It's my personal kind of bread and butter. I consider it fiction, but it's so weird.
Yeah.
It's like so experimental that I think a lot of people would see it as cross-genre or a hybrid. What is one book you've read or movie you've watched that has had a profound impact on the way you view the world?
On the way I view the world. I'm going to take a second, so it's okay if you cut a little,
Okay.
because I want to really think about this. One movie that I watched, there's two movies that come to mind. One's more recent and one I watched a long time ago. When I watched, I watched this freshman year of college. I actually talked about it, I think, on our first episode of the podcast. I've never rewatched it since, but Boys Don't Cry.
Oh, yeah, you've talked about that one before, yeah.
It, was, devastating to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In a way that no movie has made me... that made me feel sick for, days.
Yeah, I
the
remember you saying
violence. And it's such a reality for a lot of people, especially queer and trans people. So that definitely really moved me. I don't want to say it shaped my worldview, but it really just made something feel very real and tangible, you know, in a way that really stuck with me. And I've never watched it since because it's you
might not need to. I mean,
yeah.
With things like that, I think that's so powerful. And I think to me, personally, the most impactful art is, there's stuff that really you see yourself reflected in. Yeah. Patterson was like that for me.
Sure.
And then kind of it lets you explore you in a certain way that is very moving. And then there's another thing that is, and I preach this basically, is it gives you empathy for something that you do not have experience with.
Yeah.
And you kind of know that this thing's an issue or that there's an evil that happens over here or a hardship that these people experience. But then a piece of art presents that to you so eloquently and so... and doesn't shy away from it, actually tackles it and presents it to you in a way that is just rips empathy out of you. And then you have a deepened understanding of a certain group of people's struggles or a certain, individual person's struggle that they went through. You can extrapolate that to the world at large.
Yeah, and that was based on a true story.
Yeah.
And I'm a little shy to bring it up because I'm I don't know if this is critically acclaimed. I don't know if people consider it a good movie, but I just remember how I felt watching it.
No.
And not obviously just the scenes that were dark and painful, but also the really beautiful scenes. There's this one where the main character, whose name I don't remember, but I kind of think it was Brandon,
okay.
Was laying in the field with the girl that he loved, and they were watching the stars, but they did this really cool effect where it's almost like that time lapse where it looks like they're all shooting stars, with this really lovely synth music playing, and that vibe, also just really struck me, how
great.
Ephemeral that felt, So that's one that stands out to me. And then another that actually we watched semi recently was First Reformed.
Yes.
That
got my "Will God
Yeah.
forgive us" tattoo.
First
Here.
Reformed to me less shaped a worldview, but more like gave me something to think about, which was like the idea of climate change being a like potentially a Christian issue.
Yeah,
You know, which like I'm not particularly religious, but I did grow up in the church.
same.
And it made some really good points. Like, okay,
Yeah.
like if you truly believe like this is God's creation and we're supposed to honor it, like how can you abide?
How is this not a central issue for
Exactly.
you?
How is it? That's exactly it. Like, how is this not a central issue?
We were given dominion over this.
And look what we've done to it.
Right.
And I think the movie does it so well because it shows him really grappling with it. Like, he discovers this idea and has to grapple. And then he's like asking like the people that he looks up to or trusts in the church community. And they're like, well, God also told us to enjoy it. So
Yeah, they've
let's
got
make our
all
money.
their kind of ways to worm
You
out
know?
of answering questions.
Yeah.
Which, that is such a profound movie on multiple levels because,
Yeah.
and that's a great movie because it has this broader sort of idea behind it, but then it's also so distinctly personal to that character in
Yeah.
particular that I think that those two things really serve each other because his arguments are like he's not
Yeah.
wrong and his case isn't really wrong, at least to me, but at the same time, like, it's not a story about to save the world. It's a
Yeah.
story about this guy, and I think that makes
Yeah,
it
like
more
it's
impactful, right?
I totally agree because it makes the stakes so real when it's like
Right.
this isn't like he leads some global movement. This is like worst case scenario is, and spoiler alert if you don't want to be spoiled.
I don't want to spoil it because I feel like that's a good selling point
Well,
for it.
okay, all I'll say is worst case scenario is like a commotion in this small town.
Right.
Like a church that is basically a tourist attraction.
Right,
You know
yeah.
what I mean? Like it's not like the stakes are saving the world and stopping
Exactly.
global warming.
No,
It's
100%,
like
yeah.
the stakes are so real to this person's life.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, definitely.
Which is much more realistic and I think as the viewer much more tangible.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. That
Yeah.
is that's a great example. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, Maxwell, do you have recommendations for juggling multiple genres of writing?
I wish that off the top of my head I did. So I will actually think about this one for a second. I would say that almost no, because I always just write what I'm inspired to write. And so I never feel personally, this is very personal. This is not professional advice, really.
Yeah,
because
writing when you're inspired is not the typical professional advice.
No, it's not. But, you know, I go through phases where I really want to write, straight up fiction. I go through phases where I'm like, I want to write like a long, kind of more traditional story. I go through phases where I want to really write just experimental, just over and over. And I go through phases where I'm like, I want to write a poem today. Like I've been reading some really good poetry, and it's been too long since I've just done poetry because I've been doing my kind of cross poetry hybrid stuff. And so to me, it's always write what you're inspired to write. If you're reading a lot of something and you're enjoying it, I would say, if you're asking that question, and this might be guessing too much as to this person's circumstances, but maybe you are very concerned in general with productivity because you're asking, like, how can I write poetry and this and this and this, and just to know that it'll all come. Like, if you're interested in all of it and you keep moving around all of it, like, let it come to you. I mean, it's a very sports term of let the game come to you, but like it's the same. I've talked about the kind of comparisons between athletics and writing so much and artistry so much, where it's, if you are very concerned with trying to force anything, that's when you kind of tend to produce lower quality stuff. If I'm LeBron James and I really want to get that ball to the basket and I'm fighting through 3 defenders to just get my shot up, the chance of me making that shot is pretty bad. But if I just like run a play and then I get an open pass on the 3-point line and there's nobody within 2 feet of me and I can get a shot up, chances are much higher. You got to let that game come to you. So just continue to interact with the things that you like. Continue to write and write what you feel inspired to write when you sit down to write.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I actually? I'm not a writer, but
Okay.
listening to you talk about this reminds me of. I feel like I have a lot of hobbies
Sure.
that are kind of in similar realms, but it's like, what am I going to do today? Right. And
Yeah.
I think like it's almost like what you're saying is like, do what's feeling like is bringing you joy in that moment.
Yeah, definitely.
Which is like maybe not always, like sometimes you have to push yourself, sometimes it's like, oh, I'm working on this, so I need to keep working on it. But like what I have found is I'm so much more likely to enjoy and be productive at
Definitely.
the craft I'm doing or the hobby I'm doing if it's what I want to be doing. Because if I'm like crocheting when I really want to be coloring, or if
Right.
I'm, playing a video game when I really want to be doing something productive or vice versa, it's like I'm not going to enjoy it or
Right.
be as good at it if I was just doing what I actually wanted to do and trusting that the other ones are also going to come back around because they always do.
Definitely. And I think that's a great point. Anytime that you approach anything, because there's a ton of stuff that ostensibly we all like doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I love watching movies. Some days I feel like I should watch a movie
Right.
and I just don't. It's just not like I sit down to watch it and I'm like I feel like I should be doing other stuff, and then 2 days later I can watch two back to back, and
Absolutely.
enjoy
Yeah.
them so much more. So and I think any writer can really relate to this. When writing begins to feel like a chore, it is pretty brutal. I think that sometimes in editing you'll get there, but it's almost like a puzzle to be solved, and in that way there's a certain level of enjoyment. But during the creation process, when it really feels like a chore, it's pretty irritating and it's pretty brutal, and it can also be very and you don't produce that
Mm-hmm.
very good stuff under those conditions in my experience, because you're trying too hard and you're thinking too much. um, when you're free and open, writing is easier and you produce good stuff, and
Yeah.
it'll create within yourself a positive association with writing. So if you're reading a lot of poetry at the moment and you really feel like writing poetry, don't worry about that book you've been working on. Hey, you sit down and you write that poem, or vice versa. If you're reading a great novel but you've been trying to put a collection of poetry together or get your poetry out there to get submitted, but that day you feel like writing. This has been my thing recently. Is anytime that I even think that I feel like writing, I pull out my phone and I open up Google Docs and I type some lines on there
Mm-hmm.
until the inspiration runs out or I really hit a roadblock, and
Mm-hmm.
then I go, well, I took advantage of that opportunity,
Yeah.
because those moments are so special and you get such good stuff out of them,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so, um, you know, that stuff's so accessible to us now. You don't need
Yeah.
to go sit in a room anymore and be like,
Mm-hmm.
here I go. Maybe that's a great way to do it. Great books, I'm sure, were written that way.
Yeah.
But at the same time, that's probably the best advice that I could give for that is
Totally.
write what you feel like writing and what you're excited to write at the time and what you're interested in writing at the time.
I mean, like, I very rarely draw anymore, but sometimes I get inspired. Like, I feel like I really want to.
Hmm.
And I'll draw something that I'm like, oh, I'm like really proud of. And if I just, like, on a normal day sit down, I'm like, I'm going to draw something, it's nowhere near that level.
Yeah.
It's like, it's just funny how, like, inspiration and motivation, like, have the same effect no matter what your art is.
Right. Yeah,
So,
absolutely. No, I think I talked about this as a joke. I don't remember if I cut it from the last episode, but the Kanye quote about, like, maybe I actually said this on the Emily effect.
okay.
I did, but him saying everything is exactly the same. I think screaming this at Seth Meyers right before he went crazy, and what he was talking about was, and Kanye said other things that I've said to you, like he's crazy, he's
You
terrible.
you love telling me what Kanye says.
Yeah,
You agree with him so much.
he's poor. No, he's not good at articulating himself all of the time. But I really get where he's coming from a lot of the time when he's talking about specific art and
So
his approach
you're
to art in
saying when it
particular.
comes to Kanye,
Let me
we
let me
separate the art from the artist.
well, his old stuff. Yeah. I
Got
don't-
him.
Um, but point being, he was talking about fashion versus versus music. And he
Uh-huh.
was talking about like his sensibilities for both. and he can't really articulate what he's trying to say, but he ends up basically yelling at Seth Meyers, everything is exactly the same. And I get what he means, right? Like, the way that an athlete approaches a game, the way that I approach a piece of writing, or going out to take photos, or that you approach your art that you do, or your hobbies, there is like similarities to the way that we're able to produce in these circumstances. Our fixations and our interests are different, but for him, his artistic sensibility is probably his process, the way he lets things come to him, the way he acts on his instincts, the way he pulls himself back in certain areas or lets himself go in certain areas. It is the same to him, and so I think that no matter kind of the genre, you kind of follow your instincts and sensibilities, develop them, refine them, and you'll get your best material that way. And life is so long that if you do that over a long period of time, you'll end up with a really good big body of work. Like, sometimes I feel like an unproductive writer, and then I look at my volume of writing, and it's immense. Totally. It's huge. And then I'm like, oh yeah, it's because every time I'm inspired to write, or I really feel like writing, I do, and it's been years and years and years of that. Look at all this, so if a week goes by that you haven't written, and I think a lot of people have heard the very common advice of you should write every day, which I'm sure is a really, really good practice, and I wish that I was able to do it, but it can also lead to a certain sense of pressure.
Yeah, I think also your specific sensibilities, like that.
Definitely.
Putting that rule on is like very like counterproductive.
Absolutely, because it makes you feel if you miss it, or if you're stressed, or have really stressful stuff going on in your life, or even if you're just have an off day or something and really can't, then you feel a level of shame, and then that compiles over time. And so yeah.
Is that also when he says the thing about Lady Gaga, when he's like...
No, it's a different interview. Okay. Yeah, it's a great... But he goes, because she got made creative director of Polaroid, right? He's like, I love some of the Gaga songs. What the fuck does she know about cameras? Yeah. I love that, too. And I don't remember what point he's making there. But I'm sure I agree with it. No, I'm just kidding. Who knows? Overgrowth has a very plant-forward aesthetic. What is your favorite plant, including flowers, vines, and trees, and any sort of plant?
Mm-hmm. I want to say gardenias. Okay. I love gardenias. They remind me of my grandma, and we also had a gardenia bush at my house growing up.
Yeah.
I remember.
I knew that. I didn't know that they reminded you of your grandma.
Yeah, I think that's like.
We've only been together 11 years.
I know. Yeah, you actually got 2 grandma lures recently.
Yeah.
When I was a kid and I didn't quite understand what made a salad, I remember...
You put a flower in it?
No.
Oh.
No, I just remember, we were, my mom was, looking at what we were going to make for dinner, and she's like, oh, but we don't, have anything to make salad. And I was like... There are leaves right on the gardenia bush.
That's funny.
But obviously you can't just eat any leaves.
Yeah.
So gardenias are one of my favorites. And then also one of my favorite flowers, I love the foxleaf flowers.
I'm not sure if I...
You would recognize.
Oh, I know. No. Yeah.
The other one that are similar is dragon
something.
Yeah,
that's how I remember them.
Tongue? What is it? Dragon breath?
Oh my gosh, I'm only forgetting it because you're saying, the stem ones.
The stem ones with all the things.
This is going to irritate people so bad. Why can't I think of it?
I don't know.
Wow.
But foxglove is one of them. But my favorite are the other ones, because foxgloves are more like a tube, and the dragon ones are more like this, with a little thing,
Yeah. This is driving me crazy.
Well, do you want to Google it?
Snapdragons.
Jeez
Louise, I can't believe... I know that way more than foxglove. I know foxglove as being the flower that looks like
a snapdragon.
Jeez,
so snapdragons are one of my favorite...
Really evading me. Yeah, those are beautiful.
Snapdragons are one of my favorite flowers.
Yeah, cool.
What are some free resources to learn more about writing poetry?
Well...
YouTube, bitch!
That's my answer.
Okay, yeah.
Well, no, I mean, Yeah, no, that's a great answer. Well, yeah, I'll be honest. Like, I had the benefit of going to college on a scholarship,
Uh-huh.
and so that to me was in a way was a free resource for learning how to write
Yeah.
poetry. But um, I would say that there are some kind of marquee books. Mary Oliver's book on poetry is kind of a marquee book that I'm sure is available at literally any library. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's a very popular book and it's very good. I wouldn't start with it though because it is fairly technical, even though it gives a nice overview. Or maybe I even would, but not. If you read it, don't take this as like, oh, now I'm going to employ this and this and this. I don't think that's the right way. I think it's great to know the effects that certain things have. But I think when you're writing, it should be from a very organic place. I think that the best thing that you can really do is read free poetry, read a lot of poetry, find the people you really like, especially if they are known, like I've done with
Mm-hmm.
Terrence Hayes. Find the people who click with you with your writing style. Usually, people who have published works have interviews and listen to what they have to say about writing poetry. Like I've read or listened to, there are some stuff on YouTube. There's some stuff just in small journals, interviews with these people. Robert Lopez, is a small author, but one of my favorite authors, and had a very marked effect on my prose writing.
Mm-hmm.
And I've read two interviews with him that are just like they just
Yeah.
really click, and I learn a lot from them. So I think, yeah, you find the people who you really like, and if you're into more popular people, um, like Terrence Hayes is one that has, and watching them do their poetry readings, and they'll kind of talk about their poems in there too. There's a lot of stuff on YouTube, but there's also, a lot of book reviews, interviews, things like that are just free online. But I would, yeah, find the person who clicks with you and your
Mm-hmm.
artistic sensibilities. Listen to what they have to say and find the stuff that clicks with you when they say it. Don't take the things that they say as rules, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
if something kind of hits you like yes, then that's probably a great thing to carry
Mm-hmm.
forward with you when you're writing. Um, One of the things I've quoted that you can't teach urgency, and that makes me think about my own writing a lot when I'm not practicing the
Mm-hmm.
urgency that I know I should be doing.
Yeah.
I kind of bring that out for myself. So I think that that is a very good piece of advice that I got that was very specific to me. And I think there's so much to be said about poetry, but I think anytime that you find somebody who's speaking broadly or giving you directions, it's really unhelpful. I think the same. It's very across all kind of artistic forms because Emily, I take so much from film directors and apply it to my writing.
Yeah.
And they're not even necessarily the people who wrote the film, just their kind of artistic practices and sensibilities, and then
Mm-hmm.
apply that to my writing. Even the guys who made It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, I listen to them talk about that, and
Mm-hmm.
then I apply that to my writing and their approach, their
Yeah.
creative approach to my writing. So any artist who you really
Yeah.
kind of are able to connect with, um, just hear what they have to say about it. There's
Yeah.
so much out there
It
now,
sounds like what you're saying is like listen to artists talk about making art, and it doesn't necessarily
Definitely.
matter if it's poetry specific because you'll probably take something away from it.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. And then just do it. Then just practice it
Yeah.
because, I wrote I tend to think that I'm better at prose than poetry just in general. I still really love my poems.
Mm-hmm.
Personally, like not all of them, but the ones that I think of as being like my marquee poems that I've
Yeah.
sent out for publication that like I'm really happy with them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very proud of them. I really value them. I really value certain things in poetry. I'm a fan of poetry. Um, but there is plenty, especially early on and with prose, that I was exercising things, and I was so happy with that thing when I got it because I had
Mm-hmm.
kind of been going after a certain thing, and I felt like I nailed it at the time. And I look back at those and I'm like, this isn't as good as my later stuff, but I did kind of nail what I was going for at
Yeah.
the time, and that's great. Like, it shouldn't be as good as my later stuff. I should get better. Maybe you'll have a piece that was brilliant 10 years ago, right? At some point, but at the same time, having those kind of successes in your process of building is so helpful. So kind of employing those practices that resonate with you over and over. I think there's nothing more valuable than that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Did you say Mary Oliver has a book of?
Yeah. She's got kind of one of the marquee books. Like Stephen King's On Writing a little bit.
I didn't.
So Stephen King's On Writing is a pretty good book about writing, and it's another one like that. It's like, take it as you will. This is Stephen King on writing, right? It's not like the word of God on how to write. Stephen King is by no means my favorite author, but I really appreciate him as kind of a voice in the writing community because of his, expansive work, the way he's highlighted other writers, just his work ethic, the fact that he just keeps at it and keeps putting out stuff. He's not my favorite person to read by any means. But I kind of like that space that he occupies, and I appreciate him for sure. And so he has a book where he just talks about writing, and if every fifth thing he says kind of clicks with you, I think that's a big thing too, is, everybody's so different. Creatives are so different. You'll hear Tarantino talk about the way that he makes movies, and it'll sound totally one way. And then you'll hear Scorsese talk about the way that he makes movies, and it'll sound totally another way. Then you'll hear Nolan talk about the way that he makes movies, and it's totally different. You're like, how do the three of kind of the godheads of modern cinema have totally different approaches to this art? That's because you got to be kind of unique to do it. So don't follow anybody else's practices to the letter. Find what fits with you. So yeah.
Cool.
You used to refuse to eat cottage cheese.
Yes.
And now you really like it.
I do.
You used to refuse to drink beer or whiskey.
Oh, God.
And now you like both.
It's true.
Now you say you wouldn't like the way I make the Nespresso in the morning.
I knew that's what you were going to say.
When will you begin to trust me?
I told you I would try it.
That's not really my question, I suppose.
Okay, when will I learn to trust you? I will learn to trust you when we can start practicing trust falls, and maybe we can build up my trust that way.
You don't think that me having made good recommendations to you over the past 11 years is as meaningful as a trust fall?
Should I bring up some of the failures?
Yeah.
Okay. Until very recently, when you rectified this failure, you tried to make me a chip.
That wasn't a trust issue. That was a failure of execution.
You didn't trust me that I wanted to eat a tortilla. You didn't trust me.
Wait, I didn't trust you that you wanted
I wanted to eat a tortilla, and you said, no,
tortilla.
Let me make it a chip.
This isn't about me trusting you. This is about you trusting me. So you have to bring up a failure of a time that you trust you. I said I would do something.
You said that you were going to make fried pickles. You were going to make beer fried pickles.
These are really one-off things. I'm saying I tell you something's good.
Right. Okay.
And you don't believe me.
All right. Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
Oh, well, there's some others that I think are gross if you want me to list them.
Yeah, what else do you think is gross? I'll see if I think that you should taste it or not.
I think it's gross when you eat the fig bar wrapped in pepper jack cheese.
Now, I think this requires some explanation. So, a fig bar, I eat the blueberry ones typically. Blueberry fig bar wrapped in pepper jack cheese.
Yeah.
This is what I call a charcuterie board in a bite. So, if you're eating a charcuterie board, you're probably eating some blueberries, maybe some figs, maybe like a cracker or something, something bready. Maybe some cheese, and then for the savory part, maybe some peppers. Maybe some daddle pepper jelly or something like that. Mm-hmm. This is essentially, that's the basic ingredients of this. And when you're doing a charcuterie board, you're putting all this stuff together. You're trying different combinations. So I thought, hey, I drive between the two lanes on the road when there's nobody on the road.
I know you do.
There's nobody on the road in our house. I'll give this a shot. Turns out it's delicious. And I think that was a great explanation. And honestly, I think you've been owned.
Okay, can you repeat the question, please?
When will you begin to trust me?
When you turn 30.
All right, that's really soon. Cool. Nice. Well, okay, cool.
Follow-up question?
No. All right, go ahead.
Maxwell, advice that you would give someone with an interest in writing that has never had a passion to do.
What a beautiful question.
Can I give a side note?
Yeah.
Just because I know who wrote this.
Yeah, we saw this is a mutual friend of Emily and mine who.
Yeah. One time when we were at church camp.
Brad.
We did this thing where it was like we had to go around. Everyone had to write down what type of plant you would be. And then like you had to guess, like I would grab one and it would be like a sunflower and I'd be like, okay, who would I think wrote down sunflower? And he wrote down coconut.
He's awesome.
Yeah. Anyway,
he actually is. He's awesome. I love Brad. He's so cool.
So, advice that you would give someone with an interest in writing that's never had a passion to do.
How would you interpret this question? A passion
to write. They have an interest in writing, but they've
never had any passion to act on. They've never had a passion to do.
Yeah. I see. Like,
I'll answer both
I've
ways.
never had a passion to do. Maybe writing.
If you've never had any passion to act upon in your life,
go to therapy.
Go to therapy.
Because you're probably depressed.
You're probably depressed. Or a sociopath of some sort.
I don't think he's a sociopath.
I don't think so, but I'm saying this is for more than just Brad.
Okay.
You know, this is going out to the world. But if to answer it maybe more directly, if you've just never had a passion to write or to do an art or something like that, and you're interested in it, part of that like hits me like that's so crazy because like I've always been very passionate about writing. So I think when I read this, that was my immediate thought. It's like, well, you gotta have but that's not true at all. I didn't have a passion for photography when I started doing photography, and now I totally do because I was just interested in it.
True.
And I developed a serious passion for it.
Yeah.
I developed that just through doing it though.
It just took some dabbling.
Dabbling. I mean, that's it. Just dabble in it. And learn a little bit about it, especially if you're like a reader and you kind of like reading specific things, write what you like to read, and just see if you enjoy it. I mean, for photography, it was pretty immediate. I was like, oh, I kind of like these first pictures I got back. Like, I'd like to take more. I'm going to go buy more film for this little, point and shoot camera. And then that, leads to more serious engagement. Yeah. And I think that's the answer. Just engage with it. Just see if you like it. Feel it out.
Yeah.
Write more. See if
maybe read more too, right?
Yeah, I suppose I interacted with more photography, but in a way that I think when you're starting out, that can be a little bit intimidating to feel the pressure to read. I think definitely read stuff that you're interested in. Definitely read. I'm not saying if you're a writer, you need to be reading, but like input is really important to have good output. But I also think just like, I don't know, just start writing some little poems here and there. Just start writing some little short stories here and there. Don't worry too much about the quality of them and just see if you legitimately enjoy doing it or like are happy with the result when you do finish anything. And that doesn't mean that like that result is great. It doesn't even mean it's good. But if you like it and you want to get better at it, you will find ways of doing that. So I mean that's what I would say to that one.
Nice.
Yeah. This is my final question for you.
Okay.
This is to cap off some of my Women's History Month questions.
Okay.
Who do you think is the number one woman in all of history? And where do you think you rank?
Angela Lansbury.
Oh, yeah. Easy. I don't even know why I asked.
She wrote a diet book. But it was like more of a lifestyle book, and it was like, go out and garden. And I think I'm probably number 2.
I was kind of hoping you might put yourself at number 2.
Yeah.
I think probably you.
Aw.
and then maybe Malala.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And then uh, probably um,
Oh, sorry, Jelly.
probably Caitlin Clark. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Do you have one more for me,
I
or
do, I
okay, okay.
do. Um, as a fellow editor, what's something that legitimately irritates you in a submission?
I was really happy about this question.
Yeah.
Not because I'm looking for to spit in anybody's
Mm-hmm.
eye, but yes, there are things that legitimately irritate you, and it's never really the content or the quality of somebody's story, like at really at all. Like I don't care if I get like a piece that I think is like awful. Like I treat it with respect, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said this in our first ever episode, but if somebody, anybody, everybody's at a certain place in their journey. Some people might have a cap.
Yeah.
Some people's cap might be writing that I don't consider to be great writing, um, but they're doing it, and that's awesome. Like I'm not like just saying that to blow smoke.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's awesome. Like I'm happy that they're engaging with what they enjoy doing, regardless of what I interpret the quality of that
Mm-hmm.
to be. So, um, if they send that to me, I always treat it with reverence and respect. The things that I do not are kind of going back to the first question about people new to submitting is
Mm.
if somebody clearly has not read our submission guidelines, that's very
Yeah.
irritating to me. Um,
Like submitting something that's like way against what you're looking for or like way outside of the lines.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Or submitting something that even is like I had somebody, I specifically said we don't select accept creative nonfiction. They sent it in, it said fiction, and then down at the bottom it said genre, creative nonfiction. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, come on. Like the other one that I would say is when there are so many just errors on the page itself.
Oh,
Like that's
yeah.
not a hi jelly bean. That's not a content of the thing. It's like if somebody submits something with a ton of typos, and there are legitimately like writers who are like dyslexic or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
and you know it's something that people should know is, you know, even if it's more difficult for you, like an editor of a journal is more of a selector. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I think that word gets confused a little bit.
Sure.
There was a person in one of my um, classes in college who told my professor was like, "This is riddled with errors." Like he said it in the
Mm-hmm.
open forum class, right? Like,
Yeah.
and the guy said, "Well, that's what the editor is for." And he said, "No editor would touch this with a 10-foot pole," is what he told the guy like in
Yeah.
class. And it's
They're
true,
editing the journal. They're not editing your
exactly.
work.
And if you get something from an editor who is willing to edit your work,
Yeah.
I would always interpret that to be very generous of them. I
Mm-hmm.
always have, you know, even when I got some notes back that somebody really wanted to change a lot of things, it means they saw something in there that they
Mm-hmm.
valued. And even though I didn't really want to, and so that didn't end up
Yeah.
happening, I didn't take offense to that,
Yeah.
right? Like, I was very happy about that and felt very appreciative
Mm-hmm.
toward them. So, an editor, if they're that's saying, hey, I love this, there's so much in it that I see value in,
Yeah.
here's the things that I would like to tweak to make me feel like it was high enough quality to publish in our publication. But man, if you're sending in something that is just typos and just misspellings and just lazy stuff, I'm not going that, you know, I say we read every piece, but Emily, this is something that we had talked about when it was crunch time for the
Yeah.
last one, and I was just telling you, you know, I'm up until 3 a.m. reading every night because we got so many submissions, and I was having a great time reading them. But when I would come across one, I'm like, I'm never going to put more effort into a piece than the writer did. You know, if
Mm.
you don't care about the quality of work that you're submitting
Yeah.
to us, I'm not going to care about giving that. You
Yeah.
know, the if
Sure.
you're disrespectful in your submission, I'm not going to be respectful necessarily. I'm not going to be
Yeah.
like write you back like a angry
Well,
letter, but it's
no,
like
but like I'm thinking like, you know, if you're like, please don't submit anything that's like longer than 2,000 words, and then you get something that's like, I don't know, 11,000 words. It's
yeah,
like, well, there's no amount of editing that's going to make
right,
this fit. So you obviously didn't read the guidelines. I'm not going to do you the courtesy of
yeah.
treating this as a genuine
And that's
submission.
another one is, you know, we had somebody, we said, hey, we don't really like hard sci-fi,
Yeah.
and we published between our first submission guidelines, it's shortened now, but it was up to 2,500 words.
Okay.
But we said, here's a little bit of leeway. We said, if you really think it'll fit and it's outside of these parameters, and that's more of me thinking like somebody might have something that's 3,000 words, but it's just perfect for the journal. They look at our journal and they say, oh man, I think this is great for overgrowth. I think this will be perfect. But it's 2,700 words. I'm saying, and go ahead and send that in.
Yeah.
Like, don't let that be such a hard cutoff. I've made it a hard cutoff now. But then we got a person who submitted a hard sci-fi piece that was 8,000 words, and I was like, I'm not gonna read this. Like, it feels very like you're just sending this every journal that you see, shotgun approach, hoping that it lands in the lap of somebody.
Going back to why aren't you on Submittable, I'm sure like you would probably get a lot more stuff that doesn't really fit with the journal if you were on Submittable, right?
It's possible. I think that they do have categorizations and stuff and word limits. And
I guess I don't know how it works.
Yeah, it does. But yeah, I mean that's the thing. It's just being respectful. There's also, even in just general interactions, like a level of presumption that, we're a small editorial team interacting with a lot of people. So kind of, if you're sending in a submission or an inquiry and you're asking us a question that the information is available on our website, man, that's irritating, because I personally, put everybody else aside, I personally send around 300 communicative emails to people. Yeah. I know our social media people also send a lot of DMs out to people. We're busy. When we're putting this thing together, we're busy. And so when, you go like, if you come to me and you say, what are the submission guidelines? Like, hey, if you click on our website, you can click on the submission guidelines. Yeah. Like, it's a little bit like...
my last email.
Yeah, it is. So... I won't hold back on that. Like, man, that's irritating.
Yeah.
That's like kind of not being very respectful of like our time or the effort that we've put in up front to communicating these things to people. And if you don't care enough to go on the website and look for it before you just message us, like, it just denotes a little bit of a lack of respect and lack of like care for what you're interacting with. Yeah. And it doesn't make the difference at the end of the day. In terms of like, if somebody sends us an email that is very flattering in the body of their email, that doesn't really give your work an advantage over any other work. Like, it really doesn't. But if somebody is to really, really irritate me, man,
they might get a disadvantage.
Yeah,
for sure. I think that makes sense.
That's just me. Yeah. So, that's what I would say legitimately irritates me. And I actually know, I don't know them personally. I've met them after doing this.
Oh, cool.
They're a fellow person who runs a different publication similar to ours, and I feel like they were sending this in as a legitimate opportunity for me to air my grievances.
Yeah,
and so I was like, I'll take it. So,
man, well, okay, so you asked all your questions.
Yeah,
right. And these are all of my questions. But I kind of want to go out on like a more like a positive note.
Sure. Yeah, definitely.
And so I think I'd like to ask you off the dome, what is something that either you have learned from this journey so far, or something that you are looking forward to with this next one?
I'll just do both of them. Something I've learned overall, yes, honestly, on a more positive note, and I've said this, I think, in maybe some copy I've written for a post or on our website or something, but our interactions have overall been, hi, Coraline, we're getting all three cats. Hey, baby. Have been, hey, Coraline, come here. Come here. It's dinner time, huh?
It is dinner time.
Okay. I don't know, she's gonna walk right in front of the camera again. Oh yeah. So our interactions with the community and our following and at large have been awesome. Like, these are nice people, and that is something that I kind of suspected and expected going in. they are like-minded in so many ways. Even if we're not all artistically on the exact same wavelength, the things that we appreciate and value are similar. And so you get to interact with a lot of people that value the things that you value, and that is really, really special. So I don't know if that's something I've learned or but in a way that I have, because you never know what kind of the climate and mood of a kind of group or I guess almost a demographic in a way is until you get this volume of interaction with them.
It sounds like maybe not something you learned, but just something that you like experienced and are grateful for.
Definitely, yeah. And was kind of not surprised, but like pleasantly, my expectations were met, I would say, about what it's like to interact with people who are interested in the things that I'm interested in. I know my friends who are interested in it, and I love my interactions with them, but they're also my friends, you know? So you just never know, like the internet at large, right? This is an online publication. It's been awesome. So, and then, sorry, what was the second half?
What's something that you're looking forward to?
What's something I'm looking forward to? I'm looking forward to giving Mr. Jellybean dinner. I'm really looking forward to the way that kind of my vision for this will be more fully realized through other people's work as the themed issues come out. And I think that at the end of it, it will really create something that as a body of work, as a collected edition, is really cool to have. Like, I'm not saying this is like a selling point for it. Like, I am legitimately like excited about this. Like sitting on a coffee table, like imagining it there, and somebody picking it up, or if it's for sale at a bookstore or at a local coffee shop in Jacksonville or something like that. You go in and you flip through it, and it just is going to look very cool. And the way that I've schemed it out in my brain for sort of, you know, going from the inaugural issue to the daylight issue to the noir issue to the pink issue to the electric issue, kind of my vision for what that will look and feel like flipping through it, and the quality of work that I anticipate being in there based off of the submissions that we've gotten. Holding that printed work in my hands, I'm really looking forward to. I'm also really looking forward to, you know, like there are some people that got published in our weekly features, and I was able to, this kind of goes back to what I was talking about earlier. Some of them I even had like phone conversations with to like say like, hey, I'd like to kind of adjust this line. Other conversations with the person that I talked about, like maybe let's get rid of this first paragraph, or saying like, hey, I'm kind of going to break my own publishing rules because I'd really like to pair X with Y here. All of those sort of little adaptations and conversations with artists where I'm kind of like pitching them my idea for their work, and I'm always open to pushback. Like I said, I've had somebody say I'd like to change this, and I said I'm just not willing to really do it. So that's always fair, but I always love those experiences where I can come together with somebody and say, I really appreciate your work. Here's what I think. What do you think? Those conversations are super valuable. So I look forward to having more of those interactions too.
Nice. Good stuff.
Great stuff. Yeah, thank you. That was a great ending question off the dome, as you said.
I have such a way with words.
Yes, you have a beautiful way with words. Yeah.
Nice. Well, thank you for the questions that you asked me. They were really thoughtful.
Yeah, absolutely. Some of them were.
some of them really were. Some of them were. But this was a lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun.
I have an idea. We should just name women until we're out of women.
Okay, we're going to list women until we're out of women. Quietly into the mic.
Oh, ASMR style?
Hold on, I might even need to turn the game down.
Happy women.
Okay, so we can get all the way up and then talk like this.
Oh, like this?
Mm-hmm.
Happy Women's History Month.
No, that's
Was
not.
That too quiet?
No, you have to talk like this. Not whisper.
Happy Women's History Month.
Okay, you're doing exactly what you were doing before.
Happy Women's History Month.
Exactly the same.
What do you do? I just talk
I'm
really
doing
quietly.
like this. Yeah.
Is
like
this good?
Bottom of your voice. Yeah.
Bottom of my
voice. Nightmare. Oh my God.
Bottom of my voice. This is the very top of my voice.
Okay. So maybe I should start. Happy Women's History Month. Congratulations.
Thank you.
We are going to now list women until we run out of women.
Yeah.
So, do you want to start or do you want me to start?
I'll start.
Okay.
Dame Judi Dench.
Emma Stone.
Megan Trainor.
Zoe Saldana. You thought I wasn't going to get two?
The lady that played Minerva McGonagall.
You don't know?
She just
her name?
died.
Maggie Smith.
Maggie
I know way
Smith.
more women than you. Okay, you need to start moving faster, too.
Okay.
I'm naming Maggie Smith. Now you go.
Ah!
You don't know her name.
Okay. Blake Lively.
Jennifer Aniston.
Mary Oliver.
Malala.
Sylvia Plath.
Taylor Swift.
Phoebe Bridgers.
Billie Eilish.
The lady that is Lady Venom.
You have to listen.
Michelle.
You have to say actual women.
Michelle Pfeiffer.
That's not who
I
you're
don't
thinking
know
of.
the other lady's
Yeah.
last name.
Sophia Coppola.
Angela Davis.
Brenda Song. Great woman.
Ashley Tisdale.
Hilary Duff.
My mom.
Wait,
What?
was Hilary Duff a real name or was that a
Yeah,
character?
Hilary Duff's a real
Okay,
name.
I got
You're
tripped
thinking.
out.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, Britney Spears.
Bell Hooks.
My mom.
Your grandma.
Do they have to be alive?
Yeah. No, they
Marilyn
don't.
Monroe.
Okay.